How y'all doing today? This is gonna be a cool one. I wanted to prepare for this one, and I wanted to have something cool to say, and not just the regular rigmarole of this guy's got to pass to this guy's got to stop taking this shot and that shot and whatever. Um, I got to tell you, I was very inspired very recently by Samson Folk, and shout outs to Samson for doing a very deep dive into Scotty's passing. And it got me thinking. There's a lot of prompts that I had over the last 24 hours to re-engage, rethink content on this channel, and to also try to be better. Just try to be um, less biased, more analytical, and try to give people more towards the goal of what this channel was supposed to be about, which is unfiltered, unbiased truths about the team that we all love. So let's get into it. So the first things first, the Raptors are a very weird team. This should shock nobody. And I think one thing that really just shows this, and again, when you look at teams that are bad across the league, teams like Detroit, teams like San Antonio, there are certain things that are going to stick out to you, right? They're usually young. Teams that are usually bad are pretty young. They're usually pretty bad defensively. They're usually pretty bad offensively. They probably lack a superstar or any top end talent. They usually have a lot of guys who probably, maybe are getting minutes right now, but maybe shouldn't be getting minutes. This is the hallmark of a bad team, right? The Raptors don't really fit that category. And yet they're right in the basement with some of the worst teams in the league when it comes to um, efficiency, scoring efficiency at times, right? But then their offensive rating and defensive rating are nowhere near those teams. And so it's really a matter of shots not going in. It gets tired and it sort of becomes a predictable, sort of repetitive thing when you talk about the Raptors just not making shots, not making shots, not making shots. But that's sort of what it's been, right? The Raptors just haven't been making shots. And look, I didn't go into it last night because I didn't want to get into it. But there was something that I mentioned in last night's stream that someone was like, hey, why don't you expand on this? And I just didn't want to. I didn't want to. It's like it's bad for your mental health to just always be talking about something negative. But I'd mentioned Fred's body language towards some of his teammates, and it doesn't surprise me that Fred VanVleet thinks that he's one of the two best players on this team. Doesn't surprise me one bit. Does not shock me that on a night where he does well that he would act like that. Doesn't shock me. What I would like to request Fred VanVleet to do, and this is just as someone who probably pays way too much attention to this guy, is don't talk about that in the media, man. You don't have to. You don't have to do that. It doesn't serve anyone's purpose. A lot of people are going to disagree. Some people in this fan base just don't even like him. Some swear he's a G leaguer. Some, it doesn't really matter. Look, I can agree and I understand where he's coming from when he says your top two players played like your top two players, when he says, in reference to him and Siakam. But whenever you say top two, it's an exclusionary term, right? You're sort of saying, well, because we're better than Scotty and OG, and I'm going to show you that that's not entirely true. Um, so before we dig into Pascal's ascent as a three-point shooter, which has, been sparked by a very, very hot February, before we talk about Fred VanVleet's shot selection and where he's effective from, and before we go into a deep dive into Scotty Barnes' evolution as a mid-range scorer, even though he's been one of the worst mid-range shooters in the league thus far this season, and we'll talk about sort of where I see the growth and why I think and um, why. Oh man, it's hard not to talk about that. Okay, why I think that he could eventually become unguardable in that from that area of the court. Before we talk about any of that, I want to shout out two quick things. Number one, there's a supporter of this channel, Sean. He's an artist and a musician, and they're doing their album release, and they're the High Cats, and they have this single with Mercules. I've talked about it a couple times. Their show is happening in Hamilton on April 7th. If you're local to Hamilton, even if you're not local to Hamilton, you want to go support them and you want to check out a cool show, definitely consider that. It'd be very cool. And of course, a second shout out to Queensway Automotive Group for sponsoring this channel and being our first ever sponsor. We'll talk about them more at some point, but if you need a car guy in your life, check the link in the description below. They are really cool dudes and young entrepreneurs doing their thing in the GTA, and who doesn't want to support young entrepreneurs? Apparently everybody sometimes, but they've decided to support us, so we're definitely going to shout them out and support them as often as we can. So now moving on to the Raptors stats. Now, this is going to take a little minute to just dig through, so just bear with me for a second, right? I'm seeing a lot of best and worst, right? So I have talked about this endlessly on this channel. Field goal attempts, right? The Raptors are insanely good at taking more shots than their opponent, but just how good? Well, the net rank is first in the NBA, right? So they limit shots and they take a lot of shots. And the gap in there of that differential of plus 8.5 is first in the NBA. However, you consider the other side of it, which is that they allow their team, they allow the opposition to shoot almost 50% from the field, obviously because of all the gambling, right? And they themselves are the 27th ranked. So in terms of a net rank, in terms of field goal percentage differential, they're 28th. That's like being the best in the league and the worst in the league at something that is so implicitly linked. It's almost weird to do by it's weird to do on purpose, much less by accident. Um, Again, three pointers made differential, 22nd, not great, right? 3-point percentage differential. How well do other teams shoot against you? How well do how well do you shoot against other teams? That differential, shooting nearly 4% worse than your opponent from three. That differential is 28th. Free throws made and attempted, pretty middle of the pack. Free throw percentage differential, 24th. But offensive rebounds, steals, first. I mean, that's pretty impressive, right? To be the best in the NBA at anything is pretty hard. Unless, of course, you're leading the league in some, something stupid like you're turning the ball over the most or you're missing the most threes or something. But these are good things. To be number one in steal differential is great. To be the first in the league at steals is great. To be the best team in the league at limiting turnovers is great, right? These are all good things. So it's such a Jekyll and Hyde team, and no wonder the fan base is so freaking frustrated. But just take a look down at February, right? And you'll notice something happening, consistently throughout the season. They have been hovering, if you look at the field goal percentage, October, 45%. November, which was worse, that's when Scotty Barnes just really, really fell off a cliff, 44.4%. Then December was a little bit better. January a little bit worse. February a little bit worse than that. But March stands out to me as a massive difference of 3%. 48% is closing in closer to league averages. 3-point percentage. I mean, apart from October, where again, Scotty was shooting lights out in October. I think he shot 52% from three. You take him out of the equation, it's probably lower than this. But March, despite Scotty not shooting crazy well from three in March, I mean, 37.7% is very respectable. The other thing that's sort of shocking is despite Jakob Poeltl, one of the worst free throw shooters in the league, playing a lot of minutes for you, you are now having your best free throw shooting season as a month of the season thus far. Steals are also up. This is the best that we've seen this team in terms of steals. The worst we've seen them in terms of blocks. Probably not what you were expecting so far. I know 7 games is a small sample size, but if I told you that Jakob Poeltl is playing more minutes and you're having the least amount of blocks that you've had all season, that probably wouldn't jive with you. But it is an interesting thing. Now, in terms of, what else I want to talk about, like, look, I've been one of the most vocal critics of the Jakob trade, but I cannot deny he has been very good. When he was traded, I flashed the crafted plus minus model that I like to use to explain sort of the analytics of the game for a very simplified way to flash it. And at the time, he was a 92nd percentile defender. And Just in very few games for the Raptors thus far, those numbers have jumped insanely. He's gone from a 92nd percentile defender to a 96th percentile defender, which really does start to put him into rare company among centers in the NBA. This is exactly where you would expect guys like uh, Bam Adebayo, Jaren Jackson, 96th to 99th percentile defenders. His block percentage, rim frequency, rim defense, these things are the perfect complement to Siakam's weaknesses this season. Now, Siakam used to be a hell of a shot blocker. I've talked about it before on this channel where, per 100 possessions, Pascal Siakam was effectively 2.7 per 100 in his rookie season, and it's gone down to zero point 0.7. So he's not anywhere near the shot blocker. And for a guy who often hangs at the back of the defense, he's been really bad at protecting the rim. There was a stat, I think, true through about 3 months of the season that Raptors were like historically bad at guarding within 8 to 10 feet of the rim. And it's just a very efficient place where a lot of teams like to score from. So this was a very negative stat. And a lot of people were looking at Fred and Scotty and their blow by issues and Scotty's screen navigation. But really, what it came down to was a very complicated switching scheme, which relied all too much on someone to cover their back who just wasn't showing up. And that was Pascal Siakam on the back end of it. And that's why the Raptors were, in my opinion, a 500 team with Otto Porter or Precious Achiuwa, because I think those guys just did a much better job at the rim than Siakam was doing for this team. Obviously, Thaddeus Young has taken a step back defensively. No need to rehash that topic, but the Raptors needed to fill that rim protection from somewhere, and they're getting it from Christian Koloko and Jakob Poeltl. Christian Koloko, to his credit, is closer to a 92nd, 93rd percentile defender himself overall. So this is a very interesting rotation to shut down one of the most effective places on the court for teams. Now, obviously, for the Raptors, you're going to reap extra benefits from this because this will allow, your perimeter defenders to be a lot more aggressive, gapping steals and stuff, knowing that there's something behind them. It's sort of weird that Vision 6-9 took so long to mature to the point where you would get, a shot blocker in the back. And again, I don't think that shot blocker needs to be 7 feet tall. Pascal Siakam more than capable of doing it. Precious Achiuwa more than capable of doing it. They haven't done it consistently. Jakob Poeltl has. So, steam towards all those people who say, oh my God, see, I knew we needed a 7-footer. You didn't. You really didn't. But now that you have one and he's doing something that you desperately need, which is rim protection, it's been much better. Obviously, you could have potentially, if not saying that he was available, but you could have filled this need with a 6'8" shot blocker like Robert Williams. You could have done this with a 6'9", 6'10" guy. It didn't need to be a 7-footer. It didn't need to be, Jakob Poeltl. It just needed to be someone who could protect when things break down. And Jakob has been doing a much better job than whoever he was replacing at doing that. In terms of Yak's impact, we've talked about, his 8 box plus minus. It has fallen off a little bit, but these numbers, are they sustainable? They are such outliers for his career, like just such outliers. Now, I'm not saying they're unsustainable, but 6.9 box plus minus is like all NBA level production. Like if he did this for an entire season, he should absolutely be in the conversation as one of the 3 to 4 best centers in the NBA. And that's what he's been for you. He's been one of the 3 to 4 best centers in the NBA. These numbers stack favorably across any center you could think of, apart from the superstars like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic. Like those are the only guys that I can honestly, off the top of my head, think those guys are way above 7 box plus minus. Like his impact has been immeasurable, and I'm making no secret of the fact that he is absolutely a huge part of this turnaround for the Raptors on offense and defense. Now, cannot keep everything positive. You're going to have to address the elephant in the room. Fred VanVleet saying that he is one of the 2 best players on this team. Analytically, he's not wrong. In terms of box plus minus, he might actually be the best player on this team. And, there's a lot of analytics that would show shot quality. There's a lot of things he does very well, even as a playmaker, even though I have issues with sometimes him being late, sometimes being off target, sometimes being a little pedestrian, sometimes getting tunnel vision, etc., etc. the truth is that just his skill set is so much more refined than a Gary Trent Jr. or Scotty Barnes or an OG Anunoby that often he is just better than what he's replacing at times. However, it is worth noting that league average effective field goal percentage is 54.4%. Now, this number is very important. Just keep it in mind. This is league average across the league. That includes scrubs, role players. It's not just starters. It's not just bench players. It's everybody. That is what league average. Okay. The Raptors are third from the bottom in the NBA in terms of effective field goal percentage. It's literally, you take that 52% that they're shooting in terms of overall, and you make it 55. This is not just a play-in team. This is like the third team in the East. Like, that's the gap. 3% would be the gap. Okay. Now I want to show you something, and this is not shade. These are numbers. Okay. Now these are Fred VanVleet's numbers. Now I want you to not focus too much on the field goal percentage or the 3-point percentage. I want you to look at the final category on the right side, which is effective field goal percentage. Okay. Keep in mind the number 54.4. Okay. So that number, 54.4, is league average offense. League average, not best team in the league, not worst team, league average. That means the team that's going to make the play-in is a league average team, right? If you think about it from a median mode perspective, the 15th team in the league is a play-in team, which means a play-in team, ideally, if you consider the distribution of the numbers, should be roughly around 54.4%. This is your quote-unquote one of your two best players, and he shoots above league average from exactly one place on the court, which is 20 to 24 feet. That is very long twos and corner threes. We'll take a look, like just think about that for a second. So all those long bombs, the 25 to 29 foot shots, he is 53% effective field goal percentage. That is lower than league average. Okay. The super long bombs, the 30 to 34%, he's shooting 24% on those. That's 36% effective field goal percentage. He's taken 29 of those. Those are often, bailouts for a lot of other players. No, these are actual shots that he likes to attempt in games, like he's Dame Lillard. And I'm just saying that if Dame Lillard and Steph Curry shot 24% on those types of threes, they wouldn't shoot those types of threes because that's not an effective shot. One of the things that drove a lot of coaches mad about Steph Curry early on was that's just not a shot that you're used to seeing guys take. Logo threes and super long threes, 10 feet, 5 feet behind the line. That's for very, very, very rare shooters. And if I'm telling you this, trust me, other teams know that he's not shooting well from that range. And those are often open shots. They're not usually very heavily contested. And there's just really no reason to be taking them. Again, he's not taking a ton of them from 30 to 34 feet. But when you consider the grand total of 25 to 34 feet, like that's the vast majority of his offense. And he shot well below league average from there. Okay. So when he says he's one of the, top two players in the league on his team, that is the problem that he is. That's the problem. In order for this team to be successful in the playoffs, you cannot have one of your top two options or one of your top two players be this ineffective at scoring the basketball. Because that's a really big part of offense, scoring the freaking basketball. Now, for some good news, it's Pascal Siakam's shot chart. So first of all, take a quick gander at Pascal Siakam's splits. And I think that this is worth noting that his February was blazing hot from three, right? It's a massive outlier. His October was decent, but his February, 46% from three on, granted, not great volume, 4.1, but it's enough that you're like, all right, this is pretty great. And it's definitely unsustainable, but it's a step in the right direction for him. And yeah, like I think, sorry, hang on 1 second. So here is Pascal Siakam's shot chart. You'll notice something immediately, which is this looks a lot better than the last time we looked at this. A lot better. Specifically, if you start looking at just how consistently league average he is pretty much from everywhere. There's not like a great deal of places on the court apart from the left corner three where he is like significantly terrible. So this is what a three-level scorer's shot chart should probably look like. What is interesting, however, is the corner. And this corner is blazing hot for Pascal Siakam. He has become a right corner assassin, granted on very low volume, only 25 attempts, but he's shooting like almost 20% above league average from the right corner. And that's a really good place. And quite frankly, one of the coolest places that I used to see him park in the 2018-2019 championship run was in that corner. For Jakob and Scotty to operate properly, he needs to flare out to that corner more often than not. And I think that he has some very good success rates from there. So that's good. Um, Now, here is Pascal Siakam's sort of where he shoots well from. And look at the effective field goal percentage. And again, keep 54.4 in mind. Okay. Less than 5 feet, well above league average. 67.2% effective field goal percentage is great. Where it starts to fall apart is 5 to 9 feet. That is really bad. Like 40.6 effective field goal percentage is terrible. That's like, that's like 13% less than league 14% less than league average. 10 to 14%, also terrible. 15 to 19 feet, also terrible. 20 to 24 feet, also terrible. 25 to 29 feet, also below league average. Okay. So basically, Pascal Siakam like is not like any much, but like basically your top two guys are Pascal and Fred. The problem there is that neither one of them have more than one place on the court that they can be above league average from. And that is a pretty huge matzo ball to try and, overcome if you're trying to be an efficient offense. Because there are other teams with guys who have 4, 5, 5, 6. You look at Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, whatever. They're like 4 or 5 places in terms of ranges where these guys can be like above, at or above league average. Now, granted, you'll say, well, he's contested more, he's double teamed more, etc. Yeah, but he also takes more shots. So your top options need to be able to overcome double teams, and I think that is a really important thing here. Hang on. Okay, so sorry, let me just catch up with the comments here. No, he is not a great low post defender. Yeah, granted, nice. Um, yeah, there's 64 people in here. We're used to like 200 plus and 300 plus in post games, but this was a very impromptu thing, and I have a feeling a lot of people are going to catch up on this a little bit later. Okay, now I want to talk about something that is very pressing on my mind, and something that like I can't share who. Yeah, that would be cheesy if I said it, but let's just say like someone very cool gave me a congrats today, and it was a very big vote of confidence. But I want to talk about Scotty's mid-range shots. So, look, one of the things that has been pretty true for Scotty throughout the season is like, take a look at this. So, this is Scotty Barnes, and we can do the exact same thing that we did for Fred and Pascal, just to be fair, right? In terms of effective field goal percentage, he also has only one place on the court where he is remotely above league average, and that's less than 5 feet. And unlike Fred and Pascal, where, the vast majority of their shots are coming from places where they're not effective, the vast majority of Scotty's shots are coming from where he is effective. It's all the other places on the court that are sort of driving down the overall numbers, right? Like it's worth noting right now that Scotty Barnes from 25 to 29 feet is shooting nearly 31%. But again, as an effective field goal percentage, that is still like not a good shot, right? He has to do it because he has to be able to space, but He's limited his mid-range attempts, which is basically 10 to 19 feet. But yeah, like in terms of effective field goal percentage, you can see diminishing returns the further he gets from the basket. So I want to talk briefly, and this is going to be the subject of a much better and cooler video, but I want to talk briefly about Scotty in the mid-range, because this has been a shot that I have just been very against throughout the year. I have just not wanted him to take these shots, and I've just kind of felt that it would be against the team's interest for him to be attempting those shots. Partially because, the analytics are very firmly against mid-range shots in general. But I was really starting to think about his advantages. Now, this goes back to a story. So I was, and I apologize, I flashed a little bit of the story in text during the opening. But I remember I was standing there, and it was a basketball clinic in 2001, 2002. And Vince Carter was on the Raptors, and we were in the Air Canada Center. And it was very cool as he was showing us how he creates space. Now, Vince is a huge athlete. I think he had a 7-footish wingspan. I don't remember exactly. It was like 7'1". His arms were just crazy. Hands were huge, right? Strides were crazy. Athleticism was nuts. His coordination, balance, it was insane. I know a lot of people were very critical of Vince for taking a lot of jump shots and a lot of mid-range shots, but he perfected that art like really well, and it actually extended his career so much. And so the move starts it starts out with a jab or a dip, right? It starts with a jab or a dip in the shoulder. And basically that's to get the defender going the other way, to go backwards. And from there, he basically, the minute he feels the momentum of that defender going the other way, what he can do is within a second and a half ish, right? He can effectively, hang on one second here. I'm just going to try to mute this, and so I can sort of show you exactly what I'm talking about here. So I should take a look at this shot by Scotty last night. And right there, what I'm talking about really is this push. Now, some guys, they push and nothing happens. Scotty, he pushes, something does happen. He can achieve this through a multitude of different ways, but one of the things that he can do definitely is a jab, right? If it's a face-up, he can jab. And if it's a back down, he can clear with the shoulder. This is something that Raptor fans should be very familiar with, because we watch Kawhi literally do it en route to a championship. The second part of this, which is very interesting, is now that timing is off, right? Because Jalen Williams, like, if you just watch sort of right there, the timing of this turnaround is just off. And this is expected, but right there, but you see what I mean? That space, this has to be quicker. This has to be way quicker. Now, granted, Scotty is not a turnaround assassin or mid-range assassin or someone that anyone in the world has ever confused with a go-to scorer. However, and I've watched him for a while. Like, for those of you who watch the channel, I've been watching this guy since high school, AAU, Florida State, etc. I've seen him slowly start to add this to his game, and it looks better and better every single year. But one of the things that you see with like guys like Jordan, Kobe, Luka, Jason Tatum, is how effectively they time this move. None of the people that I just mentioned have the physical advantages that Scotty has, and that's where the release comes in. Now, factor in, very worth noting, that Jalen Williams is not a small dude. He's very strong, he's very quick, and he's got a 7'2" wingspan. Jalen Williams basically has the same physical profile as OG Anunoby. I think he's half an inch shorter, but he has the same physical profile as OG Anunoby. Now, look at where he is. Now, how is this created? That's the release right there, and it's gone. Like, you give a shooter this much space, that's basically an open shot. So what I'm really talking about here is a potential base building block of something unstoppable that the Raptors could get going when the offense starts to stagnate. Now, obviously, you don't like the further you get from the basket, the more space you have to attack the basket. That just makes sense, right? If you're like, I mean, if you look at this from a physics or geometry perspective, if you're 35 feet from the basket and you have gravity 35 feet from the basket and you have 35 feet of runway to manipulate the defense, see angles, clear, and once you add a guy like a Steph Curry or something to your offense, suddenly the whole floor gets bigger for everybody, right? You start going through Shaquille O'Neal, right? It's a completely different equation because he's got to go like he's got no gravity 15 feet from the basket. He's got to be like 8 feet, 9 feet from the basket. One of the things that I've noticed throughout NBA history is that long arms and big hands tend to have a negative correlation with outside shooting success. That's not to say that having big hands and long arms means you can't shoot. Kevin Durant is a good shooter. Vince Carter was a great shooter. There are plenty of guys who have Scotty's arms and hands that have learned to be great shooters, right? Kawhi is a good shooter, right? But it's harder. And typically you go through league history and you start seeing like great shooters. Typically they have smaller-ish hands and smaller arms, shorter arms. But one of the things that I can never deny is that big hands and long arms give you a massive advantage closer to the basket. And the closer you get to the basket, the more it is an advantage. Look at guys like Shaq, Kawhi, and look at their paint percentages. Look at a guy like Giannis and his incredible long arms and reach. It just makes sense, right? And it's just plain science. So at this point, I think the move would go something like this. And this is basically like the summation of what I think Scotty could become if he continues to evolve as a mid-range assassin, if you will. And sorry guys, I'm just gonna catch up in the comments real quick. Whoa, that's huge, man. Demille, thank you so much for the super sticker. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate it, man. So basically look at it like this. I want you to imagine Scotty Barnes calls for the ball just like just like he did here, right? Like just like he does, like not right there. Hang on. It'll help to have a visual reference of this. Boom. Okay, so imagine Scotty is exactly where he is on the court right now, right? So, and imagine he hasn't given up his dribble yet. So he calls for the ball. Now, he has so many options from this area of the court. Number one, something that he talked about, with Brian was he wanted to be an elbow playmaker like Jokic, right? This is exactly where Nikola Jokic operates from. This is where Dirk operated from, Kevin Durant, all superstars in the league that you can think of, they beast in this area of the court. Why? Because it offers them all the advantages for reversals as playmakers and scorers. It's a great place. Analytics say mid-range is dead, mid-range is bad. But what they do not properly assume and estimate is that any given possession that generating an advantage is always going to be easier the closer you are to the center of the court and the closer you are to the center of the floor, especially if you're a great passer or a great scorer. So you imagine he calls for the ball about 15 to 18 feet from the basket. He catches it wide with his giant mitts because he's great at catching the ball, right? He can catch it even if it's off target, out of area, he can catch it, right? No issues. He's going to turn around. He's great at protecting the ball. He has long arms. He can shield it. It's not something that you're going to be able to swipe away. Now, the first option obviously would be to look at your defender and see what can your defender take away. If the defender is small, he can go right to the basket, right? He can back him down, force a double, etc. Get right to the front of the rim where we've already seen that he is shooting well above league average. Okay. Second option, let's say the defender is huge, right? Well, now you're not going to back him down. Now you have to face up. Face up and do one of two things based on how the defender plays. If you face up and the defender backs off, plays you for the drive, well, then just take the jump shot. Simple, right? Defender presses up, blow right past him, dunk on him. Boom, right? Super easy. Now, the third thing, if you actually do end up facing a defender like a Kawhi Leonard or an OG Anunoby or a Paul George or someone who's similarly sized, and look, there are plenty of defenders who can block Scotty's shot right now. Like, I mean, it's hard to believe, and I'm not throwing shade at Scotty, but there are guys like Matisse Thybulle or someone like that, Giannis Antetokounmpo, where if they really start to scout it and he makes up his mind and he's just a little bit off on his release, it could get blocked for sure. I've actually seen him get blocked on a jump shot this year. So if you face a defender of a similar size, as this shot progresses, here's what's, effectively going to have to happen. He's going to have to master the mid range the way that Kawhi did. And that's through his crazy physical advantages. Now, if you've ever seen Scotty Barnes up close, you know that there's one thing very odd about his body, which is that he has extremely long legs. This long leg advantage is a disadvantage on some parts of the floor and a big advantage on other parts of the floor. Where it's a disadvantage, you're higher up from the ground, so as a ball handler, it's a little bit awkward to become a great ball handler when your legs are that long and your arms are that long and you're that tall. The ball just has like far greater distance, but I also think it makes it harder for screen navigation. I think the closer you are to the ground, the more shifty you are, right? You'll often see that with small guards. If you ever play pickup basketball, sometimes those 5'5" guys are really hard to stay in front of because they're so close to the ground. His longer legs, however, in the mid post, pinch post, high post area, they can be a significant advantage because he can create space using his legs. Now, his stride, his step, right, is crazy. So when I watched Vince Carter create that distance on that turnaround, basically what it was based on how quick Vince had gotten his release down or how quick Kawhi or Michael Jordan, these guys can get 12 feet roughly of separation in about 1 second. 1 second, 1.2 seconds. That's about how long it takes. So quick shoulder in or a jab step, get the defender backing off. If the defender doesn't bite, boom, up, shoot. That's shot number one. If the defender backs off a little bit, either, like redirect and go right past them, or you take a step back and 1 foot, 2 foot fade away. You start considering the physics of that jump shot. It's about 12 to 13 feet that defender has to now make up to contest that shot in roughly a second and a half. There aren't a lot of people in this world that can move that fast, man. I'm just telling you straight up, especially if that guy's not trying or if that guy sleeps on it a little bit or if he's a little bit tired or his legs are a little bit dead in the fourth quarter. But this is a shot that I think is the go-to for a lot of closers in the fourth. Guys you've typically associated with being clutch. Now, when you think about guys who are clutch in the NBA, who do you think about? I think about Kobe. I think about Michael Jordan. I think about Kawhi Leonard. I think about why? Because this thing that they can do does not require much effort. It's something you can do on dead legs. It's something you can do when you're really tired in the fourth quarter. And it's something that becomes very hard to guard with dead legs. That's why Scotty Barnes is such a great closer, in my opinion. Honestly, this is some 4D chess type of thought, but it's true. Because what he can do is easy for him, but very difficult to guard for somebody else when they're tired. And people get tired in the fourth quarter. And even though he's tired also in the fourth quarter, what he needs to actually score does not require effort. Because no matter how tired you are, your hands don't get smaller. Your arms don't get shorter. You don't become stupider. And your legs don't become so like basically what I'm trying to say is that Kawhi, Jason Tatum, these guys have short legs. I don't know if you've seen them. They have normal sized legs relative to their body. The wide stride, the long legs create an extra little bit. So the reason that Scotty, despite being very much in infancy, I swear to God, I know actual players in high school right now, maybe grade 11, that have a smoother turnaround jump shot than he does right now. They have no chance of getting that shot off in the NBA right now because they have none of his physical advantages. He's coasting right now on physical advantages because this turnaround that I just showed you here is not anywhere near as smooth enough, as effective enough, as well timed enough right now to be like considered a deadly weapon or consistent. But what it is it is maximizing one of his greatest physical advantages over his defender. Now, let's say the common, trope or common, contest from people who are against running an offense through Scotty is, well, if you doubled him like people double Pascal or people double, other first options in the NBA, well, then he would be cooked. His percentages would go down, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's where the argument falls apart for me, because if you double Scotty Barnes, it actually goes to his advantage, not yours. There's no way in hell in the middle of the court, especially in the pinch post, high post, that area, that he is not going to be able to find a wide open shooter, a cutter cutting behind the basket, or Jakob Poeltl. What you're seeing right now with the Raptors offense improving, it's largely because of Jakob Poeltl being so much smarter than Precious Achiuwa and Chris Boucher. I hate to, throw those two guys under the bus, but it's actually not even Chris Boucher, really. It's mainly Precious Achiuwa, right? Jakob Poeltl is just, and Pascal Siakam to a lesser degree. Sometimes he doesn't cut to the right place either. Jakob Poeltl always cuts to the right place. He's always in the right position and he catches the ball. So quite frankly, yes, you're going to shoot better when the guy who takes a lot of shots makes a lot of shots at a high effective rate. But also, you add, like we had a caller yesterday talk about movement shooters around Jakob. How about movement shooters around Scotty, man? Because I guess what I'm trying to say in a very long form way, and I'm sorry to draw this out too much, this is about to become unstoppable. Because what he's doing right now, like he did it against the Lakers 3, 4 times, he did it against the Clippers a few times, we saw it yesterday, this is becoming a part of his game. So regardless of how bad the season numbers look from mid-range, like he's becoming more and more effective with that shot. It is the perfect place on the court for him to be. It's a great place. It sucks sometimes that, yes, Jakob is in there and Pascal sometimes cuts into there and Boucher and that, and all these guys are off and like just coming in and dragging second defenders towards him. But it's actually not the worst thing because he's such a good passer. So whereas Kawhi has a series of counters, right, out of that, you'll often see Kawhi dip his shoulder into a guy, and if the guy's a really bad defender, he might fall back, and Kawhi's just going to level up. And if the guy is like a really big defender, Kawhi's going to go right past him and dunk on him like he did many times against the Raptors. Or, if the guy's a great defender, like an OG Anunoby, then Kawhi is going to go to his counters. And every great player has 2 to 3 counters. Scotty has a great counter too, and his counter is his passing game. And I think that once he expands his scoring package and his scoring gravity, and he adds not only a way smoother release on this jump shot that he's flashing potential of against, the last 4 teams, but also when he starts to aggressively hunt for the ball when he has a mismatch on a smaller defender, when the defense starts sending double teams, or if the defense mismanages one of those post-ups, it's going to start resulting in 1.15, 1.25 level points per possession type of possessions for him. And that's the type of thing that you really, honestly, that you need from the Raptors. Like that's what you need. Like you need that level of offense from somebody. Now, I've mentioned it before. Oh, thank you so much, man. Ken Boo, thank you so much. Loving this show and analysis. Thank you. So, yes, we've often talked about mid-range being the superstar zone. I think Scotty can ascend to that. He's obviously got a very, very long way to go, but I like this shot for him. I like that he's showing more potential there. I think he has all the physical advantages to be able to flash that. I like, to sum this show up, I like the fact that the Raptors are playing more to their strengths. I think if I have one criticism, it is that respect, just full respect to Fred VanVleet. If you're the second best player on a team, my guy, that team is going nowhere. So if you really want to be paid this offseason, you really want your team to do well, you're going to, even if you think that you are the second best player right now, and even if that might be true to some degree, and it is true to some degree, it shouldn't be true. It can't be true because you're too limited. And I think it's a strange thing, right? If you look at the Raptors offense, you have Jakob Poeltl, Pascal Siakam, and Scottie Barnes, all of whom are at above league average efficiency in the exact same place, which is within 8 feet of the rim. That's exactly where they need to operate. Siakam needs to be more of a three-point shooter. And we saw 4 attempts. I know this is going to sound crazy to some people. If he can evolve this year or next year, even in the playoffs, if he can evolve to 6 to 7 attempts, right, that would be so beneficial for this team. Scotty Barnes, if he can take that 0 to 8 feet, if he can take that to about 15 feet, then this whole thing can work, right? It'll provide just a little bit more room for Jakob. So basically, there's the whole thing works by everyone moving 5 feet out. That's how it works. Siakam, too many mid-range shots. Go out to the three. You're obviously capable of hitting the shot. You hit 46% of your threes. Take more threes, man. Like, lean into the Karl Anthony Towns, Miles Turner thing. Take more threes. You'll actually score more points. The analytics are undefeated on this. You'll actually score more points. Your numbers look better. For Scotty Barnes, like, start a little bit further. Don't post up, 4 feet from the basket. Start 12, 15 feet from the basket. Let the mid-range, game, come to you and be a playmaker out of those positions. And for Jakob Poeltl, continue doing what you're doing because he's obviously doing everything perfect. And for Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby, settle into third, fourth option, basically, territory and, be release valves for the offense. Move a little bit more without the basketball. Gary Trent Jr. obviously is moving much better this year and finishing in the paint much better, but he could also be so much better and more effective. And if all of that can come together, if all of it can come together, then this very weird team can start shooting 2-3% better from the field. Suddenly, we're not talking about, the 17th or 18th best team in the league. We're talking about the 10th to 11th best team in the league. And honestly, in the playoffs, a 10th to 11th best team in the league does have a chance to upset a top seed. So, not saying they will. I'm not saying they can. I'm just saying that they can fix three very easy things and make themselves a lot better. Yes, even better than 48% from field, which is what they're shooting in this month. So, yeah. Anyway, that is my stream for Friday. Again, thank you so much to Ken and to Demille for the super chats. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a wonderful Friday evening, and good luck to the Raptors going 2 games tomorrow and the next day. This is going to be a good test for this team, but it'll be tough. But let's see if they're up to it. And yo, man, I'm feeling real good today. I'm feeling really good today. I got a really major vote of confidence from one of my favorite players of all time, and it was just a really nice gesture. And I don't know. I'm trying to be I'm trying to be a little less slanted, and I hope that even though, yes, I did absolutely rip Fred VanVleet a new one in terms of, his shot selection and his overstated impact on, the team and stuff. I hope that the way I was able to do it was it came off a little less like I have a grudge against the guy, because I don't. I want him I want him to play more to the strengths of the team. And yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So to anyone who catches this later, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. It does help us a lot. Make sure to hit like, smash the like on your way out. I'll appreciate that a lot. And yeah, I'll catch you guys next time. And look out for that Scotty mid-range video, because I'm going to go through like footage of Kawhi and Paul George and Michael Jordan and how they generate their advantages, and just how this one specific shot through NBA history has just carried superstar after superstar after superstar. And if Scotty can get this down, like, he's been working on it for a while. Like, I watched a lot of, the footage from his workouts in the summer, and this is just something that he's been slowly putting together. And for whatever reason, it's like when his legs feel good, that shot feels good. And when his legs are sort of heavy, the shot's not great. And I don't know if that has to do with mechanics or just repetitions and feel, but he will get better at this. And once he gets better at this, it's curtains for the league, because there's really nothing you can do. There's like probably like, I can't think of another player in this league that can enjoy some of the physical advantages that he can enjoy in that area of the court. So yeah. All right, guys, take care. And Black Clover Greatness saying, when you make the video, I hope you talk about ball pickups. I see Paul George drag the ball for far back. That's a good way to think about it. Yeah, I scripted it out already. It talks about a lot of cool stuff. So I mean, I'll get to it at some point for sure. I'll try to time it so that maybe it drops mid next week, but it'll be a good video. It'll be kind of like the Joe Wieskamp video, except it'll be about Scotty Barnes and this sort of ascent from this place. Um, to anyone who's curious about more Raptors content, big shout out to Samson Folk. Um, if you haven't checked out the article that he did on Scotty's passing, you can definitely check it out on Twitter, on Raptors Republic. It's really cool. I've spent a good deal of the last 2 weeks shitting on content creators, so it feels good to shout one out. So yeah, so all right, cheers, guys, peace.